And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the insipid and vacuous and puerile forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. It's another primary day in America. Well, not in America, but in a couple of different states. One of them is close to us, Montana. And then, of course, there's the California primary, where we are all dying to know what's going to happen with the L.A. mayor's race, or at least I am. Have you watched the videos of Spencer Pratt that he's put out? Have you seen any of those? My personal favorite is the Lego video that's entitled, Karen Bass is Awful. And, you know, one of the things about a California election, all right, they're irritating. Most of them are left-wing. But you've got all the resources of Hollywood there. And chances are, if you're running for office and you have, you know, a snowball's chance on a Wyoming prairie in the middle of August, you probably know somebody at a production studio. And so the political ads are tremendous. I've got one to show you in a little while that I'll play. It's great. Spencer Pratt as Batman. But anyway, so there's primary contests in California, Montana, and Iowa. There's one in Montana, there's one in New Jersey, New Mexico, and another one of our neighbors, South Dakota. So plenty to talk about there. But before I get there, I want to talk just briefly about the Campbell County Republican women primary debate that was held, I believe it was held yesterday. But once again, Baba Barlow, or Desk Drawer Barlow. That's the one I heard over the weekend. Listen to this one. So the reason you call him Desk Drawer Barlow, because that's the only place that you'll find conservative values, conservative bills, or anything that even resembles a pro-life agenda is in his drawer. Or at least it was for the last, 15 years or so. But he didn't show up to a debate held in his home county. In fact, I saw a notice from the Campbell County Republican women that said that he asked them to remove the senator's picture and any references to Eric Barlow from their event. Now this go all the way back to the Republican convention that was held in April. Eric Barlow didn't appear to give a speech in front of the crowd, but he did record a video inside the convention hall not that long before he was due to give a speech, and then asked the Republican Party to play the video for him. And now we have another instance of Barlow not showing up at a debate. And I heard that he really wasn't in Hot Springs County at the Reagan Day dinner. I don't know where this guy's at, but he's not showing up to Republican events, which probably should be a big red flag to you that he's not really a Republican. Oh, for sure. He's held that R at the end of his name for his entire career, which, plenty of his family are Democrats, by the way. But he's had that R at the end of his name for his entire career, but he's certainly not showing up at Republican events, which tells you that one of the three candidates for Wyoming's governor claims to be a Republican, but doesn't even resemble any of that. Now, before we get too deep into this, how do we determine if somebody's a Republican? You know, these candidates are going to show up on your doorstep, and you're going to see them at town halls, and they'll be in every coffee shop that you could possibly imagine. And when they say, hey, you know, I'm a Republican. Now, if they say I'm running as a Republican, you know that you already have a big problem from the very beginning. But when they say that, or I'm a Republican, you should ask them, okay, so can you define what a Republican is? And if they give you some long drawn out explanation about how it's my family's long history of conservative value and all of that, you know that they probably don't believe it. Because generally speaking, when you believe something wholeheartedly, it doesn't take you long to explain it at all. That it comes right off the tip of your tongue, and you don't even have to think about explaining what it is because you know it so well. Because if it is a belief system, then you've internalized it. Right? It's not something that you have to come up with. Well, you know, I suppose in this situation it applies here, and you know, maybe if it's a question of abortion, well, then you know, I might be a little bit more moderate. Which, by the way, that term doesn't exist. But anyway, well, it does exist, but it doesn't mean anything. But if there's a long, drawn-out explanation of what a Republican is, you should know right off the bat that the person you're talking to, A, has probably never been at a Republican event, or B, doesn't even understand what that word means. It's really simple. It's the Republican Party platform. It's 23 timeless truths. And let me just read a couple of them to you so we don't get off in the weeds, because you have people like Gail Simmons and Rod Miller and Tom Lubnow and that whole crowd claiming that, well, these aren't timeless truths. No. These are just Gail called them in an interview with the Casper Star Tribune that, well, they're just merely aspirational. They're really goals. No, they're not. Here's why. So life. That's the first plank of the platform. All individuals are endowed by their creator from the moment of conception to the moment of natural death with life, liberty, and property. Equality. Everybody is equal before the law. The Second Amendment. Your Second Amendment rights cannot be denied or infringed on by the government. Private property rights, American exceptionalism, low taxes, religious freedom, family values, the Constitution. I mean, these are all really, really, really easy things that if you're a Republican at all, you should be able to roll these right off the tip of your tongue. Now, by the way, if you missed the last two podcasts, you should really go back and listen to them. On Saturday's edition of the program, I talked about whether the term moderate really means anything, because we hear that in the mainstream media a lot. Well, you know, he's a moderate Republican. Well, it's not a question of, and then there's this other idea of purity, so-called purity tests. The suggestion that somebody can be, you know, only partially a Republican. Well, in that episode, I debunked both of those, because it's not a question of how Republican you are. The question is, are you Republican at all? Because nobody is really moderate about anything. Now, if you believe something, you believe it wholeheartedly, right? There's no question in your mind. And you're not moderate about it. The things that you believe in, that you feel strongly about, you're not moderate on those. And neither is anybody moderate on anything. Now, there may be a question of, you know, some policy where a candidate might say, well, you know, I really haven't thought about that. That doesn't mean that they're moderate on it. It means they just haven't given it a lot of thought. But the truth is, when you look at the Wyoming legislature, there are no moderates. Not really. No, I mean, if we're generous and we say that if your voting record is 70% with the Republican Party platform, then we'll consider you a Republican. Now, I think that 70% is way too generous. You're scoring a solid C minus, maybe a D there. But after the 70th percentile mark, the voting records of just about everybody in the legislature drop off a cliff. It goes from 70% to the 30s and 40s. And those percentages, what I mean by that is how often you vote with the Republican majority. So if you claim to be a Republican and you are voting with the Democrat majority, 60% of the time, you're not really a Republican at all. And so nobody is really moderate. And those individuals that are on the lower end of the spectrum, according to evidence-based Wyoming, the reason why their scores are even that high is there's a lot of bills in Congress, down in Cheyenne, that everybody agrees on. Should we keep the lights on at the prison? I might argue no. Okay, maybe lights. Maybe keep the heat at 65. I don't see any reason why to keep them all warm and cozy. But there's some bills that everybody agrees on, right? One of them is the water bill. There's what's called the feed bill. Sometimes there's a little bit of controversy over that. But in general, there's a group of a batch of legislation that just about everybody agrees on. That's the only reason those folks score as high as they do, if 40% is a high. So anyway, when you're talking to these candidates at your doorstep, or when you bump into them at the grocery store, or if you happen to be at a town hall, and they say, well, I'm a Republican. Well, you need to get them to explain what that. Hey, explain what that means. What does that word mean? Y'all use it. Why don't you explain it to me? And you'll be able to tell right away that they're not. So anyway, that was Saturday on the program. And then yesterday on the podcast, I went through the entire U.S. House race and handicapped the whole thing. And interestingly enough, though there's some controversy about the Fabrizio poll that Chuck Gray had done, there's an article in the Cowboy. I don't know if we'll get to it. But anyway, there were some leading questions after the first poll questions. But anyway, interestingly enough, my handicapping was right on. And I didn't see the poll until after I'd finished the episode and uploaded it. But once again, right on the money. And I know, if you want to know what's happening in Wyoming politics, just ask me. Don't go to the cow pie, because you're not going to get the truth about what's really happening on the ground. Just come talk to me, and I'll let you know. So let's see here. There's a number of races. Oh, yeah. So what are we going to cover on the program? Of course, we got to talk about today's primary elections. That's going to be a little bit of fun. And then Josh Durrell. Oh, the Wyoming Business Council. God, that guy. He was on the cow pie this morning. And all I'll say, I don't want to ruin the story for you, but at least he's consistent. I was texting back and forth with Agent 29 before the program, and Agent 29 says, well, I hate a moving target. Exactly right. And he's doing the same thing and saying the same stuff, as if, you repeat a lie long enough, a majority of people will believe it. So we're going to talk about Josh Durrell, and then this bizarre story about Bill Gates. It's out of the New York Post, but Bill Gates apparently crafted his image to look like Mr. Rogers. Not even kidding. It's a pretty crazy story, and we'll talk about that. And then I've got a whole bunch of other stuff. Of course, we got the Chuck Gray's poll that came out, and we'll dive into my handicap of the U.S. House race. But first, let's get to the primary election today. And I pulled this piece from the Post Millennial. There's several of them out there. I think maybe I've got a Fox News piece in the stack of stuff. But first on the list, and this one, usually you don't have a mayoral race that's leading all of the headlines. But Spencer Pratt has done a tremendous job in getting attention. And okay, so Los Angeles is one of America's biggest cities, but so maybe the mayoral race deserves as much as New York City. Lord knows we heard enough about Mamdani. But he's been really great at getting a lot of attention on that race. Here's what the Post Millennial says. The L.A. mayoral primary election is taking place today. The article says tomorrow, but it's today. Between incumbent mayor, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, who is awful, Spencer Pratt, who is a reality TV star, and L.A. City Councilwoman Nithya Raman, who is an avowed socialist. According to one of the latest polls from Plymouth Union Pacific, research indicates a statistical tie between Pratt and Bass, with Raman lagging behind. Bass led Pratt in the poll 23.5% to 21.2%, which is within the margin of error. Brahman is a distant third at 12.7%. Bratt has campaigned on law and order and getting drug addicts off the street, while also taking aim at Bass for her record on the Palisade fires. One of his first campaign ads was a video of where his house used to be before it was burned down, and there's an Airstream trailer parked on the lot right now. Both Bass and Rahman have attacked Pratt for having little political experience. And that's one, you're going to hear this a lot. You hear this a lot even in Wyoming elections. Well, the person I'm running against, they don't have any political experience, so you should elect me. Well, it's a bit of a red herring. Here's why. Because if a candidate doesn't have, and this is a connection lost, but hold on, there we go. So if you're just coming back here, having a little bit of a bandwidth issue this morning. But anyway, so one of the big lies you hear in politics is, well, the person I'm running against, they just don't have any political experience. Mm-hmm. So how do you get political experience? Well, you have to get elected. And the only way that you get elected is through an election. And so, and by the way, just to say that, somebody doesn't have any political experience, that really doesn't mean anything. Maybe the person they're running against, you, for example, has crappy experience. You talk to any business owner. They would rather hire somebody, at least I would. I would rather hire somebody that doesn't really have any experience as opposed to somebody that has worked for another company for years and years, simply because the new guy, they don't have any bad habits, right? Any bad habits they're going to pick up are the ones that they get taught working at your business. So you can train them the right way. And so, and in a lot of these races, and it runs from mayor all the way up to congressman, what we've seen has been pretty much the same. It's the Republicrats. People go to Washington, D.C., and, we hear the same stuff. Well, we really tried to get that thing done. We just didn't have the votes, so we're going to have to try again next year. And then the next year comes along, and it's the same crap. How many times have we been told we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare? How many times have you heard that? Over and over. Or what about the Save America Act? A piece of legislation that has overwhelming support across the country. The last poll I heard was, around 70%. You would think that if you were running for office, which that's every seat in the U.S. House and half the Senate, that you would want an electoral win. Hey, man, most people support that bill. Why not get it passed and get an easy win? But it's the same old stuff. So every once in a while, a candidate comes around that, like Spencer Pratt, that's never been in public office before, that's never run for public office before, and is just a guy that says, I want to fix things. Like Karen Bass is awful. I want to change that. And so Spencer Pratt comes along, and not very often, but every once in a while, that person wins. Now, in California, they have a jungle primary. So it's the two top candidates out of the primary election advance to the general election. So all Spencer Pratt has to do is finish in the top two, and then he's on to the general election. Now, according to what the Post-Millennial and the Plymouth Union polls say, that looks pretty likely that he's probably going to do that. And here's one of the reasons why. Like I told you at the beginning, his advertising has been great. I mean, just wonderfully funny. And so let me just show you. I can get to you. There's the show prep file. All right, check this out. This one, I saw this one for the first time this morning. It's great. Watch.
Please, I'm begging you. There's homeless drug addicts in front of the schools. My children aren't safe.
Look, if you were a transgender migrant, I could get you a free pussy.
Let's move the drug addicts closer.
Bass already solved crime. I endorse her.
Next!
I just want to rebuild my home. It's been over a year.
Mom, look!
This is a machine. If we want to burn this town to the ground, pull through that!
I feel so close.
You can do it, Spencer!
Now.
See what I tell you? Fantastic. Why wouldn't you want that guy elected mayor? Now, here's the downside. Sometimes you get a candidate like Zoran Mamdani, who, never been elected before, never held public office. Sometimes you get what you pay for, my friends. So the question is, how do you pick the right person? Well, you've got to vet them. And Spencer Pratt, he's been on TV, and he doesn't have a voting record. This is true. One of the things that you run into after you've been doing this as long as I have, you realize that sometimes you get a good candidate. Sometimes you get one who appears to be conservative, and then the left gets their hooks in him, and that's the last conservative thing you'll see out of them, which kind of means that they weren't conservative from the very beginning. Take J.R. Riggins, for example. J.R. Riggins, a heck of a nice guy, but he is not a conservative. There were a lot of votes in this past session where he went full-blown Democrat on us. I've heard stuff, I've seen stuff on social media that says, well, he's a moderate. No, I don't think so. I'm convinced that moderates don't exist. You're on one side or the other. And okay, so I'm hearing a little bit of pushback about that. Well, David, there are some people that are in the middle. I don't really think so. I don't think so at all. If you happen to be in the middle, it means you just don't care. You don't really have an opinion on it. But nobody really, if it's something that they believe in, says, well, I'm kind of moderate on that. In the podcast, I mentioned that years ago, I talked to a longtime mayor of Buffalo, Wyoming. Okay, so he's a mayor of a small Wyoming town, but he always told me, David, the most important thing to your constituent is the pothole in front of their house. If you can't figure out a way to get that pothole fixed, they're not going to vote for it. Or they may vote for you the first time, but they're not going to vote for you the second time. And what that means is everybody has issues that are important to them, whatever they are, whatever side of the political spectrum they're on. Every voter has issues that are important to them. We've all met these people that they show up at political rallies or town halls or whatever, and there's only one issue they talk about. A lot of folks who are passionate about the Convention of States, well, that's the only thing that they want to talk about. Or you'll hear folks, I want to talk about term limits, which is another bad idea. But anyway, that's the only issue that they'll talk about. Well, they're not moderate on it. That's something that they believe in, on one side or the other. If there is an issue that maybe the media claims has moderate support, I don't think so. I don't think that people are moderate. Now, opinion may be split on either side, but that doesn't mean that you have a moderate in there. Not at all. It means that you have a split pretty well down the middle, and 50% believe one way and 50% believe the other. And if you look at the evidence from the Wyoming legislature, there are no moderates down there. Nope. There's either the left or the right. And that's it, my friends. And, so again, and here's another trick, right? If you run into, a candidate, which you're likely to this summer, and they say anything around that, well, I'm kind of in the middle on that. No, you're not. You're either doing one of two things. You're telling me what you think I want to hear, or B, you think that your opinion is not going to be palatable to the people that you're talking to, and so you claim that you're in the middle. The truth is, the only thing that stays in the middle of the road for very long is the yellow line and deer carcasses. And eventually the deer carcasses get pushed to one side. Same thing holds true for politics, my friends. There really is nobody in the middle. And if they are, well, they're probably lying to you. I mean, it's an easy political calculus to make. And just, and I think that you should be skeptical of all candidates, every single one of them. Republican, Democrat, conservative, wacko liberal. You should be skeptical of all of them. I mean, it's the old joke, right? How do you know when a politician is lying? Well, their lips are moving. And so you've got to vet the candidates, even the people that you like. And that's why debates are so important. This country, well, and I think I'll just talk about this country. We have a long and storied history of political debates. And that's how you find out where candidates are at. Because they have to defend what they're saying. And so, you see there's a big forum that's happening in Cheyenne. Forums are stupid, my friends. Because, you ask a question, you hand the mic to somebody, hey, what do you think about this? And they're just going to give you their opinion. They don't have to defend what they believe. They don't have to, give you any sort of analysis behind it. They don't ever get questioned on it. It's just, yeah, this is what I think. Yeah, great. And then they move on. I mean, it is entirely ridiculous. There's no reason to have a forum, which is why I think that, one of the more important things is that we do have political debates, actual debates, which is why the Open Range Record is going to be sponsoring one in Casper on July 16th. It's going to be a great event. We're going to hold it at the Rialto Theater, and they've got a really cool old-time bar. So it's going to be a cash bar. We'll have some hors d'oeuvres, and the atmosphere in there is pretty intimate. And so you'll actually feel like you're part of the event. The seating, it's all cocktail tables. It's going to be really sweet. So the place will hold about 175. And so, hopefully we pack the joint. But it's going to be a great event. And the reason I bring it up so early in the program is today I'm going to release some more details about how that thing is going to work. And I think you're going to find that we have a pretty innovative way of figuring out how the debate's going to work. And it's, classic debate rules, back and forth. And then nobody's going to know the topics ahead of time. That way they can't get out. And the candidates, they're really going to be caught, not off guard, but, they're not going to be able to figure out their canned answers ahead of time, which that's another really important part. So anyway, stay tuned. Keep your attention, your eyes peeled on the Open Range Record today. I'm going to release some more details, and I think you'll find that we've got an innovative way to do it and a way for you to participate in it. And I think that's a tremendous part of it. With the internet being what it is, there's no reason why, even if you're sitting at home, you can't have, some way to participate in this. So it's going to be fantastic. And so keep your eyes peeled on the Open Range Record today. I'm going to release some details. Probably be this afternoon because I've got a few things to put together, but it's going to be great. All right, so let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to hit some of the other races that are happening today. So we'll do that when we come back.
What can be.
Oh, what happened there?
Unburdened by what has been. What can
Do you miss
be
that?
Unburdened.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I always hit the wrong button. There we go. All right, let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Are you watching what's happening in our country and asking, what can I do? Join the John Birch Society in Salt Lake City, June 6th, for a powerful one-day conference. The day includes a host of respected speakers, 2 meals, and meaningful connections. You'll gain clarity on the issues and walk away with practical steps you can take to your community. Reserve your seat today at jbs.org/SLC26. That's jbs.org/SLC26.
One of those speakers at the Salt Lake City event will be yours truly. That's right, my friends. I'm one of the keynote speakers at the JBS 2026 conference. So join me in Salt Lake City if you want to see me. The following ad was paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
You won't find him leading a horse out of a barn or leaning against a corral with the sun setting behind him, because Wyomingites don't need a candidate who creates a good photo op. What you will find is a hard-working, experienced leader who believes Wyoming should always come first. A conservative grounded in strong values and steady principles. Ready to lead Wyoming the right way. Brent Bean for governor.
Today's program is also brought to you by Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for any type of building for your property, you need to call Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They're the best in metal building construction, and they've been doing it longer than anybody else around. So it doesn't matter if it's a garage or a barn or maybe something bigger, like a roping arena or maybe a giant warehouse for your business. The two guys you need to call first are Marcos and Jesse. Again, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out on their website, mortonbuildings.com. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right more than 99% of the time. And, you know, my friends, I get asked all the time, hey, and it's usually Agent 29 that's asking me, how do you document all that? Well, when I get one wrong, I lead with it. I consider that any retraction, I consider that the whole episode to be a retraction, because, and here's why it's important that you do that when you're a media outlet, because it goes to your credibility. That if you aren't willing to admit when you make a mistake, well, then people shouldn't really believe you the rest of the time, right? Nobody is right 100% of the time. The Cowpie should know that because they're wrong a lot. But anyway, so I take the total number of retractions that I've had to do, which in the 6 years it's only been 10. But anyway, take the total number, subtract that from the total number of podcast episodes I've done, and then there's the percentage, and it actually equals out to be a little bit more than 99%. So there's how you know. So before the break, we were talking about the different primary races that are happening. Now, the other one that's in California is the gubernatorial race. Again, they have a jungle primary, so it's the top two people that advance. And there's over 50 people that are running for California governor. So, you know, many of them are not going to come anywhere close. But one of the front runners, Steve Hilton, I saw this morning that he let's see if that's in here. I don't think that it is. But Steve Hilton, former Fox News host, he's actually kind of lagging in the polls a little bit. And so, you know, he was up there, you know, in the top three, but got to be in the top two in California. So we'll see what happens on that. California is one to watch. Another one is an Iowa Senate race. And in Iowa, it's Senator Joni Ernst. Of course, she's not seeking another term, so it's an open seat. But there are two Republicans and two Democrats in the running to take the position. The winners of the Tuesday's primary in Ohio will advance to the general election. U.S. Representative Ashley Hinson has campaigned with support from Ernst and is running against former state senator Jim Carlin. who has talked about his legislative experience and donor independence. For the Democrats, Josh Turek, which, by the way, he was an interpreter for the Blind Sheikh, the guy that planned the first World Trade Center bombing. So, I mean, talk about some skeletons in the closet or in Guantanamo anyway. He's running against a guy named Zach Walls in the primary. I guess I missed it. Here's the gubernatorial race in California. A wide field of Democrats and a few Republicans are running to replace Governor Gavin Newsom. The top contenders from each party appear to be the Democrat Javier Becerra. He was the Secretary of Education under, I believe that was Joe Biden. The Health and Human Services Secretary. And Republican Steve Hilton, who's been endorsed by President Donald Trump. Other Democrats in the race include Tom Steyer, the billionaire climate change fanatic, Katie Porter, and others. The other Republican in the race is Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. So that's the governor's race. Now, our neighbor to the north, right to 20 minutes from the Cowboy State Politics studio, in Montana, Republican Senator Steve Daines is not seeking a third term and is endorsed by U.S. Attorney Kurt Alm to replace him. Trump has also endorsed Alm. He's also has endorsements from Tim Sheehy and Governor Greg Gianforte. While there are other Republicans on the ballot for the primary, Alm is the only major contender. The Democrats, Representative Riley Neal is running for the Senate. She's running against four others, but has 5 times the funding of all four rivals combined, per the Associated Press. The primary winners will also face off against University of Montana President Seth Bodnar, who is running in the race as an independent. There's a race in New Jersey. Tom Keene Jr., he's running unopposed in the primary for District 7. He'll face the winner of the Democrat primary. New Mexico, for New Mexico governor, will face off in the primaries on Tuesday as Michelle Lujan Grisham is term limited. Those Democrats running to replace Grisham include Deb Haaland, the former U.S. Interior Secretary. Yeah, isn't she great? Yeah. That would be a good pick. One of the sworn enemies of Harriet Hageman. And Bernalillo County District Attorney Sam Bregman. For the Republicans running in the race, there's Rio Rancho Mayor Greg Hull, former Secretary Duke Rodriguez, and small business owner Doug Turner. And then our neighbor to the east in South Dakota, primaries being held in the gubernatorial race with 4 Republicans vying for the role. And that is Larry Roden, U.S. Representative Dusty Johnson, and State House Speaker John Hanson, and businessman Tommy Doden. A candidate has to secure 35% of the vote to win the nomination outright. If there is nobody who cracks that number, the top 2 candidates will go on to a runoff election. That's what we need to do in Wyoming. We need to back up our primary election a few months, I don't know, maybe till in March. Have a primary election and then have a runoff election. And I would suggest that the candidate needs to get at least 50% plus 1 to win the nomination outright and then go on to the general election. But we need to have a runoff election. That would do an end, that would do away with all of the, having 14 people running and, in the same race, and the candidate that wins ends up getting like 22% of the vote. That would completely do away with that. But anyway, those are your primary races, and I'll be watching them all day long to find out if Spencer Pratt ends up pulling that one out. I mean, and here's another piece. This is the other one from Fox News. From reality TV to City Hall, Trump-backed Spencer Pratt soars in L.A. mayor race as Californians vote. Like Kayleigh McEnany discussed this, Karen Mass and the Spencer Pratt race, and she highlighted reports of $418 million spent with only 10% effectively getting people off of the street. That was the amount of money that Karen Bass spent. Spencer Pratt criticizes the alleged corruption, calls out the abuse of dogs on Skid Row, and details his faith-driven mission to make Los Angeles a safer city for moms and children. Pratt's mayoral campaign is surging in recent polls against Bass. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump's clout over the GOP will once again face the ballot box test today just to see how well he does. All right, you know what? Okay, had enough of that. We'll get back to the politics a little bit later. Well, kind of. I mean, anyway, the primary election a little bit later. Put that one over there. So this morning on the Cow Pie, our old pal Josh Durrell was on the show. That guy, at least he's consistent. He continues to say crazy things like, I don't know, that the Wyoming Business Council needs to be involved in affordable housing and the free market doesn't exist. I mean, and here's the thing, at least on my program, you're going to be challenged to defend your beliefs. I'm not going to let you run at the mouth and just let what you say go unchallenged. Now, here's the difference. On my program, at least I let the candidate talk. I got one piece of criticism about the Jimmy Skogard interview. I couldn't have been more gracious to the guy. I let him talk for a lot. I had to do a lot of correcting because I don't think that guy was ever in a civics class to save his soul. Which, by the way, if you paid attention to the podcast, Skogard finished the interview with me. And then he got in his car and he drove over the mountain to the Hot Springs County Reagan Day dinner, in which he told the crowd, and he obviously doesn't know that much about Wyoming politics because he doesn't understand that I have operatives just about everywhere. But one of my operatives was recording him. And in his speech, he claimed that I called him a Democrat in the interview. Now, it's true. He should register as a Democrat, but I never called him that. In fact, I didn't even call him a redcoat. I should have, but I didn't. I don't do that in interviews anyway. So I played that on the podcast, and now, I mean, when I published the episode, he says, "Well, what names did I call you? What did I do?" Well, you told a whole bunch of my friends that I said some stuff about you. So anyway, so there's that. But anyway, back to Josh Durrell. So he was on the Cow Pie this morning. And we're probably going to have to do a little stop and start with this just because I am not going to be able to take it. But here's Josh Durrell on Jake in the Cow Pie this morning. Here you go.
We're back from news. Cowboy State Daily Show. Josh Durrell joins us, CEO of the Wyoming Business Council. Josh, how's the council doing? You've had a lot of interim meetings and people peeking under your hood. How's everything?
Jake, it's been great. We welcome it. I think that's exactly what we need right now.
Let's talk about, we're going to talk about housing. Certainly a hot topic issue. Everything we want to do in Wyoming, everything that we see in the headlines, whether it's a data center, any kind of business development, we want to boost the economy. Really bright things ahead for the state, but it all hinges on workforce. And the workforce, guess what? Workers need a place to live, eat, sleep. Housing is going to be the choke point. And business council's got their eyes on it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It is definitely a choke point, and I kind of want to reframe it a little bit, if we could, and not call it a housing problem, because if it's slowing down business and it's slowing down growth, what kind of problem is that? I think.
Okay, all right, hold on. The reason why we have a housing problem is because government is in the middle of it. If government would stay the heck out of private business, stay the heck out of housing, then perhaps private individuals would be able to build housing for workers. It's not a problem for government. It's a problem for the free market. That if there is a demand for housing, the free market will provide. The problem is you have people like Josh Durrell and apparently Jake in the Cow Pie, which, by the way, I don't know that guy has any opinions of his own. He just reads off of the notes that his Cheyenne overlords send him. But anyway, government doesn't have any place in housing. There's nowhere in the Constitution that says government should provide housing. That taxpayers, and I need to rephrase that, it's taxpayers. It's not government. You don't have a right to a house. That's up to you. It's up to you to provide for your family, for you to find a place to live. That's not the taxpayer's job. There are essential functions of government, but housing is not one of them. The job of government is actually pretty small. I like to drive on nice, smooth roads. I like those. I hate it when I hit a pothole that a politician had promised to repair but didn't. We got to have police. It's pretty nice to have that. Some fire. I'll even give you some administration in the town. You got to have somebody running the whole joint. But beyond that, that's about it. We don't need a lot of government. And when government gets in the way, it quells the private market. I talked to a guy in Gillette. He's a contractor, a developer. And what he does is he builds apartment buildings. And he said he built a couple of them in Gillette. And but he's decided that he can't compete with government anymore. And so until government gets out of the heck of the way, he's just not going to build anymore. Because why would you compete with government? I mean, that's competing with an entity that has unlimited funds. Well, the government doesn't have its funds. You have them, but the government does a pretty darned efficient job of taking your money. And so the private enterprise, private companies, I mean, it is impossible to compete against government. So why would you do it? I mean, if the city council, if the county commission, if the state is going to provide all this housing, there's no reason why a private entity would do it because there's no money in it. But the truth is, that's not the job of government anyway. And if government got the hell out of the way, prices would go down. Because when you subsidize something, for an outrageous amount of money, I mean, if you want something screwed up and done inefficiently, get government involved because the price will always go up. Because, you're not spending your money. You're spending other people's money. And when you do that, there's no impetus to be efficient about it. There's no impetus to find the best deal. There's no impetus to do a better job because it's not your money on the line. And secondarily, when we have government housing, it's never taken care of. I mean, growing up, I used to, in debate, we would kind of use government housing projects in bigger cities as, a good example. Why? Because they always turn to crap. Because when you don't have skin in the game, when it's not your house, you don't take care of it because you're not responsible for fixing it. It was built by somebody else. So why should you take care of it? And so you don't. And then in 10 or 15 years, the whole darn place is dilapidated because nobody took care of it. And I mean, are you really going to call government and say, hey, my water heater went out. Could you come and fix it? Oh, I'm sorry. It'll be 3 weeks until we get there. Because that's what happens with government. Do you know why that doesn't happen in the private sector? Because responsible landlords, there are slumlords. I've rented from a few of them. But they're in the business to make money. And the way that they make money is they rent places to people. Well, nobody wants to rent from you if you're a crappy landlord and it's going to take months for you to fix something that's wrong at the house. The apartment building I lived at in Buffalo, if there was a problem, it didn't really matter what it was. That landlord was on top of it. I mean, he was usually there. He owned two big apartment complexes in Buffalo, so you could find him. You could say, hey, man, there's, something happened with my apartment. Can we get it fixed? And usually he was there the next day. That doesn't happen with government. Why? Because nobody's on the hook financially for it, right? There's no landlord saying, man, if I don't take care of my property, nobody's going to want to rent for me and I'm not going to make any money. Or I'm going to get a crappy reputation in town. And I'm not going to be able to charge what I want. Well, when government's involved, there's no impetus to do that, right? Because the private guy has to compete with government, which is impossible. And then the government building that was built, the building that was built by the taxpayer, nobody's going to fix that either because it's not their money anyway. And so, things get progressively worse. And last is not the role of government anyway. And frankly, I think that the entire Wyoming Business Council is absolutely illegitimate because it is impossible for government to create economic development. You want to know why? It's all tax dollars. Tax dollars are derived from private enterprise. The only way that private enterprise pays taxes or that the free market expands is if you offer a new product or a new service, something new that people like and that they pay you for, and then you pay taxes on that business. That's the way that the economy expands. Now, let me give you a simplistic example here. And I know that there's liberals watching this program that are probably going to take what I'm about to say completely out of context. They did with Agent 29 when he said it. But here's why that won't work. Let's say that you get a job working for YDOT. Okay, great benefits, great job. You probably make way more money than anybody in the private sector. And I mean, it works out good for you, right? Now, it's all that paycheck comes from taxes. The only way that you get a paycheck from YDOT is somebody else paid the taxes, and then that money goes into the coffers, and then you get your paycheck. So you take your YDOT paycheck to the grocery store, and you spend, $300 of your YDOT paycheck, your taxpayer-funded paycheck at the grocery store. And it's great for you because you can spend, you get your groceries. You go to all these different businesses. You go down to the sporting goods store and buy a new rifle. All great. All works out good for you. But it's all tax dollars. And so even though you're spending money at a business, that money has already been taxed. So the only thing that you're really doing is you're recycling tax dollars. And so that money that you spend at the sporting goods store, which is already taxpayer money, then gets paid in taxes. There's no new business that's created. It's just a closed loop in where we continually recycle tax dollars. And so if you want to know why the economy doesn't seem to improve when government gets involved, that's why. And the other problem too is it drives out businesses, right? If taxpayers are paying a higher wage, why should anybody go work in the private sector? Well, they shouldn't. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. And if you look at small towns like Buffalo, and Buffalo's I use that example because I used to live there. I would say a conservative estimate is that 70% of the population work for government in one way, shape, or form. It's either the BLM or the Forest Service or the county or the state. There's a highway patrol station there, or they work for the city or the school system. And you take all of that. That's a huge amount of positions. And so really what's funding that town is not private business. It's the taxpayer. Because all of them, when you get 70% of your workforce working for government, you want to know why business doesn't expand? That's one of them. And then we put private business in opposition with government. We set up institute like the YMCA. That's a great one. That started out as a private corporation, a private nonprofit corporation. Well, we've since changed that to where it's government funded. The senior centers, okay? There's another great one. In Sheridan, the public transit system, it's called Goose Creek Transit. That's paid for by taxpayers. It's run out of the Hub on Smith. The Hub on Smith is by the way, guys, if anybody at the Hub on Smith is listening to this program, which you should be, you got about 2 days to acknowledge my FOIA request. Anyway, so they have their own public transit system. I'm bouncing all over the place today. And taxpayers dump a tremendous amount of money into it. We pay for the fuel, we pay for the upkeep, we pay for the new bus, we pay for the bus driver, pay for all of that. At the same time, there's two private companies that provide taxi services in town. Why don't those taxi services get their fuel paid for? Why don't those taxi services get their insurance paid for? Well, they don't. They have to compete with government. And most people use Goose Creek Transit because it's way cheaper. Why is it way cheaper? Because taxpayers are funding it. It's absolutely bizarre. Anyway, anytime you get government in it, it depresses the free market because individual private businesses have to compete with government. This is not rocket surgery, my friends, but people like Josh Terrell are so ideological that they can't see what they're doing is actually hurting the economy. Let's go ahead and continue. Josh Terrell is about to say something that's absolutely outrageous. As if anything he doesn't say.
It's not a housing problem. It's a business problem. And our employers are feeling it acutely. So I think if we could sort of change it over to critical infrastructure for business, then I think that helps people understand it's not a social program. This is all about helping businesses grow and succeed in Wyoming.
It's not a social program. It's about helping businesses succeed. No, it's not. It is not at all. Because you're providing housing, which is not your job, which is the job of the free market, and yet you're taking that away. You're literally removing a private business out of the economy, and you wonder why it doesn't go up. So one comment, I want to put this up on the screen. I think this is an excellent point. Roxy says, during the boom and bust in the oil and gas industry, workers always found housing. If housing is such a demand, then how come we are not seeing all these constructors rushing into Wyoming to build? Government had not, I think what Roxy's trying to say is the government doesn't have any business in housing. You're exactly right, Roxy. If government gets the heck out of the way, the free market will provide. It always does. Let's continue. Oh, it's not a social program.
I think that's a huge thing because here in Teton County, I see that play out. If anyone is inclined to be so-called anti-housing, and I don't know who is who doesn't want to give somebody a place to live if you're living under a bridge in a cardboard box? You'll know what.
I don't want to give somebody a place to live. I want them to earn it. This is the problem right there, that we don't give people housing. It's not, government is not giving somebody a gift. Government takes money out of your pocket and then hands it out. The problem with socialism, my friends, is pretty soon you run out of other people's money to spend. Nobody is giving anybody a house. And I want them to earn it. I want them to go get a job from somebody who's building a business that can afford to pay an employee so that they can go get their own housing. That's how our system is supposed to work. But if you want to know why our economy isn't increasing, and by the way, Wyoming has one of the lowest GDPs out of any of the states. I mean, we're not completely at the bottom, but we're not far off, my friends. That's why, because we get government involved in everything. Let's continue. Start it over. How about we start right there? Maybe.
Meetings and people peeking under
All right,
your
we're gonna
hood.
start over a little bit, but it's worth it.
How's everything?
Jake, it's been great. We welcome it. I think that's exactly what we need right now.
Let's talk about, we're going to talk about housing. Certainly a hot topic issue. Everything we want to do in Wyoming, everything that we see in the headlines, whether it's a data center, any kind of business development, we want to boost the economy, really bright things ahead for the state, but it all hinges on workforce. And the workforce, guess what? Workers need a place to live, eat, sleep. Housing is going to be the choke point.
All right. We got something going on
this
here.
Is
I tell you what, let's see here, 1:14. We're going to take a break. I'll get this videos figured out, and then we'll try it again, because you got to hear what Josh Durrell's about to say. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll have this video all ready to go. Back in a minute.
Are you watching what's happening in our country and asking, what can I do? Join the John Birch Society in Salt Lake City, June 6th, for a powerful one-day conference. The day includes a host of respected speakers, 2 meals, and meaningful connections. You'll gain clarity on the issues and walk away with practical steps you can take to your community. Reserve your seat today at jbs.org/SLC26. That's jbs.org/SLC26.
One of those speakers at the Salt Lake City event will be yours truly. That's right, my friends. I'm one of the keynote speakers at the JBS 2026 conference. So join me in Salt Lake City if you want to see me. The following ad was paid for by Brent Bean for governor.
You won't find him leading a horse out of a barn or leaning against a corral with the sun setting behind him, because Wyomingites don't need a candidate who creates a good photo op. What you will find is a hard-working, experienced leader who who believes Wyoming should always come first. A conservative grounded in strong values and steady principles. Ready to lead Wyoming the right way. Brent Behan for governor.
Today's program is also brought to you by Morton Buildings. If you're in the market for any type of building for your property, you need to call Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They're the best in metal building construction, and they've been doing it longer than anybody else around. So it doesn't matter if it's a garage or a barn or maybe something bigger, like a roping arena or maybe a giant warehouse for your business. The two guys you need to call first are Marcos and Jesse. Again, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out on their website, mortonbuildings.com. All right. I think I got it figured out now. Here we go. Josh Durrell in the cow pie. Get your duct tape ready. He's about to make your head explode, or at least mine anyway. Remind me later. Somebody send me a message. I need to get duct tape. Here we go.
A choke point, and I kind of want to reframe it a little bit, if we could, and not call it a housing problem, because if it's slowing down business and it's slowing down growth, what kind of problem is that? I think it's not a housing problem; it's a business problem, and our employers are feeling it acutely. So I think if we could sort of change it over to critical infrastructure for business, then I think that helps people understand it's not a social program. This is all about helping businesses grow and succeed in Wyoming.
I think that's a huge thing, because here in Teton County, I see that play out. If anyone is inclined to be so-called anti-housing, and I don't know who is who doesn't want to give somebody a place to live if you're living under a bridge in a cardboard box? Nobody's anti-housing, but you're anti-government involvement, organization involvement, it is the social aspects of it, this idea that it's a handout. But we got to get out of that way of thinking, Josh. This is a speed bump. This is an impediment to business, to growth.
Did you hear what he said? We got to get over this idea that this is private industry. This is a social problem. We got to get out of that way of thinking. It tells you exactly where that guy is at. You want to know where the cow pie is at? It's right there. And you want to know why? Because most media in Wyoming, not me, not my companies, not the Open Range Record, but the rest of them are absolutely dependent upon government. You see all their ads now. It's an election season, so, and by the way, if you want to advertise on this program, shoot me a message. If you're running for office, I'd love to advertise for you. If you want to talk to Wyoming conservatives, talk to me. Because there's over 60,000 views on this program every single month. And, let's be honest. Occasionally we convert a liberal into our way of thinking, but it's private enterprise that always runs things. If you want things screwed up, get the government involved. And, if you're giving money to the cow pie, frankly, you're funding the people that hate you. But anyway, here we go.
Both.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that people are sort of conflating that. And heck, right now we're doing a webinar today at noon, and we have already 187 registrants for that. People are really paying attention to this. And I think that's just it, is that people feel like this is some sort of a handout. We're talking about water, sewer, and roads.
No,
folks.
You're not.
We're not talking about
No, you're not. Right now, I have a FOIA request to the Wyoming Business Council for every document that has the name Alpen Beauty on it. Alpen Beauty is a cosmetics company based in Jackson, or allegedly based in Jackson. They got $2 million of our money, and they'll tell you, it was ARPA money, or, hey, guess where ARPA money came from, Jack? Us. We gave them $2 million while that cosmetics company had their products available at Sephora. So don't tell me that this is all, it's all infrastructure. That's really what we're doing. Really? Really? What about the $20 million that you gave for a berry farm? Okay, granted, a lot of that was loans and grants, but it was $20 million that was allocated to that company, a berry farm at 7,200 feet. Don't lie to us, Josh Durrell. Most of what you've done has been economic adventurism. That you've been monkeying around in the free market, and then you claim that it doesn't exist, which is about what he's about to say. Here, listen to this.
Free houses. We're just trying to unlock that growth. And I think that's where people get a little confused is they're like, well, the free market says, well, if there were a free market and if it were working, we wouldn't have this problem because there's clearly a demand for it. So I think we've got to...
No! First, we do have a free market. The reason why you're not seeing its influence is you are monkeying around in it. That government thinks that somehow there's some place that government needs to be involved in business. It doesn't. And for the CEO, and I don't know how you have a CEO of a government agency, and I don't know, frankly, I don't know, who makes $288,000 a year of your money. $288,000 a year. He makes $24,000 a month of your money to monkey around in the free market and then claim that, well, private business just isn't taking care of stuff. So we have to be involved. Well, maybe if you hadn't been involved in the first place, private business would be able to prosper. The truth is, my friends, that some businesses succeed and some businesses fail. And if you talk to any successful businessman, they will tell you that at least at one point in their life, they went bankrupt on something. Most business people have at one point or another. Why? Because they came up with a product or a service that people didn't pay for. How many operating stables do you have in downtown Wyoming towns? How many carriage drivers do you have? Not very many. And in fact, none. Why? Because there's no demand for it anymore. Because technology exists. We invented the car. People can drive themselves from point A to point B. We don't need carriage drivers. And in bigger cities, we have them here in Sheridan. You have cab drivers. Why don't those people drive horse-drawn carriages? Because they can drive a car. Why don't we have, why isn't there a booming industry for, brick cell phones? The big, huge bag phones, those were great. Why isn't there a booming industry? Because we created these things that'll do the same thing. The truth is, my friends, that businesses rise and fall, and they ought to be able to do that on their own. That's the free market. And to suggest this whole idea, and it, we first became, we first heard George Bush talk about it in the, I had to break the free market in order to save the free market. That's hogwash, my friends. If you get government out of the way, private business will take care of it. If there is a need, private business will supply it. Let me give you an example. So right next to my wife's highly successful salon, and which, by the way, if you're a stylist and you're looking for a place to land, contact the lovely Christine. You can find her on Facebook, Bombshell Hair and Wellness Studio. She's got a couple open spots. So if you want to move to beautiful Sheridan, Wyoming, and you want a great place to be a hairstylist, that's the place. But right next door is a business, and I love this. They rent plants. I'm not even kidding you, my friends. They provide these beautiful plants, and they rent them all over town. And their service is, hey, if you need a plant, a ficus tree, I don't even know if they have ficus trees, but they have a Norfolk pine. So if you want a Norfolk pine in your office, will you contact this business? They will deliver it, and they will take care of it for you. And you can have this beautiful plant in your office, and you don't have to worry about your brown thumb and killing it. That business owner figured out that there was a need for pretty plants in office buildings, and she happened to have a green thumb. And so she decided, hey, let's make a business out of it. Now, have you ever heard, when you think about businesses, that's not one that pops into your head. That's not one that you think, yeah, I'm going to go into business and rent plants. But it works because there was a need for it. If there wasn't a need for it, that business would go bankrupt, and it ought to. You know, this whole idea that businesses have to keep going just by virtue of them existing is ridiculous. When you get government involved, generally speaking, you start getting handouts because they end up being too big to fail. You remember that whole thing that we had to prop up businesses because of the employees. The truth is, if a business fails, those employees will go elsewhere. They will find other work. Now, it may not be the work that they want. And here's the other thing: like, you don't have a right to a good paying job. You don't have a right to a job, period. You have a job. You have the ability, the opportunity to go apply for a job and, you know, ask a business owner, hey, I want to come work for you. Can you employ me? I'll do a great job. And the business owner says, heck yeah, we'll do that. That's your job, right? That's not the job of government. Now, he says some more crazy things here, so let's just continue and just a few minutes more of Josh Durrell, and then we'll move on.
Dig a little deeper, and that's where we have been digging deeper into the problem. And I think that's where people need to understand that the problem is not this surface level issue. It's a couple or 3 layers deep.
Helping business with infrastructure, one of the key things Wyoming Business Council does. Me personally, I will much rather feel Business Council is offering grant money or low interest loans to a startup, to a business, to house their employees. I think that is pretty crucial.
All right. I know. I can't handle it. I cannot handle it. Why does government get to pick winners and losers? Why do we let that happen? Why is it that you can give money to this business over here, but this one over here doesn't get any money? Why does government get to pick winners and losers? It is, and I think somebody posted in the comments a little bit earlier, this is socialism for the well-connected. That's what this is, welfare for the well-connected. The government doesn't get to pick winners and losers. Government doesn't get to decide, and all the time it's these bureaucrats that have no idea what they're doing. Josh Durrell doesn't have a background in business. He's a mechanical engineer. Their human resource director was a former bartender. Where does that sound familiar? My point is, the government doesn't have any business, nor do they have any expertise in picking winners and losers. They shouldn't be doing it anyway, but they don't have any business expertise. And the very reason how you know that that's true, because they're not in private business. If you were in private business, you wouldn't be working for government. I mean, and our whole philosophy on this is entirely backwards. It used to be that if you wanted to make money, that you would go work in the private sector, that you could make a heck of a lot more money working for a private company than you could working for a government counterpart. And frankly, there shouldn't be a government counterpart. Now, the trade-off is usually when you worked for government, you got lower pay but better benefits. But if you wanted to get rich, you would never go work for government. We've completely inverted that. Now, the guy that runs the business council, and there was another comment here. Let's see, where is it? It went by. Oh, there it is. One listener says, let's fire everyone at the business council and set Durrell's salary to $1. I mean, he's made plenty of money. I mean, we've given him plenty of money. He hasn't made it. In fact, the only thing he's really done is screwed up business for a whole bunch of private individuals. But the point is that our thinking on this whole subject is completely inverted. That now, if you want to make a heck of a lot of money, like Josh Durrell, then you go work for government. You don't go work for private business because you can make more money working, taking the taxpayer money. This is completely backwards. And if you want to know why our system isn't functioning the way that it ought to, is because you've got government out front. It is absolutely infuriating. All right, so let's move on. Let's see. What do I got next? One guy we haven't talked about. So Graham Plattner, the former Nazi. Well, okay. So, I mean, I guess maybe we can't call him a Nazi. But he did have a Nazi tattoo, though, for 15 years. And though he claims that, I didn't know what that was about. I didn't have any idea. You had the Nazi SS tattoo over your heart. So maybe there's a problem there. From the Daily Caller, Graham Plattner is totally shocked that the guy with the Nazi tattoo is actually, and voters, man, we are totally shocked that the guy with the Nazi tattoo actually turns out to be a scumbag. But this is from the Daily Caller. Graham Plattner caught by wife exchanging raunchy texts with women. It's been several women. I saw on Fox News last night, they couldn't figure out if it was a dozen women that he was text cheating on with his, cheating on with his wife, or if it was only 6, but correct me if I'm wrong, but if it's even 1, that's a big problem. But here's what the Daily Caller says. The wife of Maine Democratic Senate candidate Graham Plattner discovered that her husband had exchanged sexually explicit text messages with multiple women and flagged the texts for Plattner's campaign last year. Plattner's wife, Amy Gertner, flagged the text messages for some of Plattner's aides in August of 2025, but the campaign ultimately decided to keep the scandal under wraps. Gee, I wonder why. And label it as a personal matter between the couple and their marriage counselor. Yeah, because you definitely don't want voters to know that the candidate has been text cheating on his wife with multiple women on raunchy social media sites. Plattner tied the knot with Gertner in the fall of 2024. And she first discovered the sexually explicit messages just months later in the spring of 2025. So he hadn't even been married a year when he was trying to cheat on his wife. I mean, this guy is a dirtbag. I mean, the first year of marriage, man, you're still in like the honeymoon period, at least. Well, I mean, lovely Christine and I still are, though, like every marriage, we have our ups and downs, but you're still pretty darn happy, I think. But Gertner, but not Graham Plattner. No. Graham Plattner, not even 6 months after he got married, was already trying to hook up with somebody else. Gertner told the Journal that she and her husband worked through the infidelity, and their marriage today is stronger than it was before. I bet. Yeah, I'm sure. That's why you flagged all the text messages so the campaign would know about it and they could prepare to have a response. But this goes to a larger issue. Do the Democrats really care about who they tap for office? Do they even vet their candidates? Conservatives, we go to great lengths to vet candidates. We don't always get it right. But the number one way to be embarrassed in an election is you don't know who your candidate is. You don't have them, all right, you're going to run for office. So tell me all the skeletons that are in your closet so that we can deal with them ahead of time. Evidently they don't do that. They didn't know about the Nazi tattoo. And obviously they didn't think that texting, text cheating on your wife, the guy's wife, wasn't the problem. Let's see here. National Democrats have rallied behind Plattner, pushing him as a political outsider and a lowly oyster farmer who's prepared to be a thorn in the side of Republicans. The text revelations, however, add yet another scandal to a campaign defined by Plattner's long list of disturbing comments and actions that include defending his Nazi tattoo, mocking a wounded American soldier, and making derogatory comments about women. Earlier this month, the Daily Wire reported that Plattner once lamented the closing of a loophole that allowed military contractors to save money on taxes by spending their time off banging hookers in Thailand. I'm telling you, this guy is a dirtbag. And Democrats, like Bernie Sanders, are absolutely pushing him. And they see no problem with this. Now, here's the good news, is that the gal he's running against, Susan Collins, historically polls low before an election. She almost always ends up being able to pull it out. Most of her elections, before the election, she was, down seven-ish points in the election. She almost always ends up pulling it out. But the truth is, in this case, the Democrats, and this brings up a larger issue. I really don't think that your establishment Democrats, that is, the people that are in power in the Democrat Party, they are not where mainstream Democrats are. I know a lot of people that are, they're not Republicans. Some of them claim to be rhinos or redcoats, but my words, not theirs. But they're actually good people. They just think that we should have bigger social programs and more government spending. Though that is not the same Democrat that is pushing people like Graham Plattner. Now, we do have radicals in the state of Wyoming. I mean, Carly Provenza is a really good example. Remember, it was not that many years ago where she had I can't remember. It was a post on X where she was talking about the Church of Satan. Not even kidding. Not kidding you at all. I can dig up the post and find it. But we do have radicals in Wyoming. Sarah Burlingame is another one. She's the head of Wyoming Equality. Fortunately, she's not running for office this year, but she was in the House of Representatives. So we do have these same type of radicals here. And you have them in every community, but I don't think that represents the mainstream of the Democrat Party. But, show me who your friends are, I'll show you who you are. And I mean, that's how Democrats get branded. When you're the person that organizes a protest on the steps of the courthouse, and there are all sorts of signs with swastikas and signs that say, let's show them 1793 France, and it's your local Democratic Party that's putting that out there. I mean, I think that there's a big rift. And again, if you're a member of the Democrat Party, I think that you ought to be the one explaining that. And this brings up another thing that I wanted to talk about. In Wyoming politics, I think that we have three distinct groups. We have, and you can see this, I think, in the governor's race. But you have the Democrat Party, many of whom are radicals. But again, I don't think that represents like the mainstream Democrats. They're just hiding out in the Republican Party. But you have one group who are Democrats, very, very liberal. They've got a lot of candidates running in this election, and I think that if you are, I don't think that you should discount them. If you can get 200 people on the steps of the courthouse in Sheridan, Wyoming, they represent a bigger threat than you realize. I don't think that you should discount them, but that's one group, the Democrats, and then you have the redcoats, people who, and essentially they're the same people, but there are some small differences. You have the people that have infiltrated the Republican Party for electoral purposes. Either they're the folks that they want to monkey around with the Republican primary and elect the most liberal candidate, okay, redcoats, or you have people that are, that really hold mostly Democrat views. They just like their guns, okay? But those are two groups, right? The rhinos, the redcoats. And then on the third group, I think that you have, generally speaking, conservative people. I think that represents the majority of Wyoming citizens. Let's be honest, if you don't put up with snow 8 months out of the year, if you just don't want to be left alone. In doing so, you end up being, the self-reliant, rugged individualism and all of that. By your very nature, you have to be conservative. And so there's those three groups. So if you look at the gubernatorial race, Eric Barlow, he's definitely on the far, I guess I should use this hand, definitely on the far left. I mean, he is a radical, and he's he's pretty much Mark Gordon 2.0. The problem is, though, that Eric Barlow is way bolder than Governor Gordon is, if you can imagine that. But he's definitely on the far left. Over his 15 years in the Wyoming legislature, he voted with the Democrat majority over 80% of the time. He's got a crappy pro-life record. He's the only person in the last 25 years to write gun control into Wyoming law. That was his so-called restoration of rights bill. Anyway, there's a gun control part in there. Anyway, definitely that guy is on the far left. And then you have kind of the rhino version of it. And this one, I'm going to meet with her tomorrow, but I really think that the majority of redcoats in the state are going to end up voting for Megan Degenfelder. And then on the conservative side, you have Brent Behan. Now, the difference here is Brent Behan doesn't have a voting record, but I've known the guy for years. He's a conservative. There's no question about it. And so you got those three distinct groups. And, it's in all fairness, politicians sometimes turn the corner. Look at Donald Trump. He was a Democrat for a really long time, ended up being a Republican, and now he is the most conservatives in the state have a love affair going on with Donald Trump. So Ronald Reagan was a Democrat for a long time, and then he went over to the Republican Party. So it's possible that politicians can turn a corner and can change things up. But I really think, and to just sum this whole segment up, and then we'll go to our third break, I really think that you've got three distinct groups in Wyoming: the radical leftists, the conservatives, and then you have the redcoats, who are basically Democrats who just happen to like their guns. I mean, there's Democrats that like to go shooting, so, when they vote. And here's the other thing, too. Do not forget this, that when it comes to Wyoming governance, the Wyoming legislature or the executive branch, there are no moderates. That is not a thing, because you end up with politicians that are either on one side or another. You end up with Mark Gordon's and you end up with Mark Jennings. Two completely different sides. Now, Mark Jennings, he's been in the House of Representatives, but he's solid conservative. Okay, or people like Brent Behan. But when it comes down to voting, there aren't any moderates, and you can look at the data that tells that. You're either on Gordon's side or you're not, and that's the way that it is. So let's go ahead and take our next break, and when we come back, we'll finish up the program, or at least we'll get a little bit further down the road. It's Cowboy State Politics live on a Tuesday. Thank you for watching. Keep the comments coming. I love being in this studio because I can interact with you. It's a lot of fun. So keep them coming. We'll be back in a minute. I know that you think it's spring and that the weather is just going to continue to warm up and you don't have to worry about snow or ice or 30-degree temperatures anymore. In case you've forgotten, this is Wyoming, my friend, and that sort of thinking doesn't work here. 1 minute, it could be 75 and sunny, and 10 minutes later, snow. Whatever the weather, you need a pair of socks that'll keep your feet cool and dry even on the hottest of summer days. And if you happen to run into that spring snowstorm, you'll stay nice and toasty warm. Well, your feet anyway. To get you a pair, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. These are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia, Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada.
Straight to hell.
Iceland,
France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the last year and a half been more than you could bear? Well, if it has, you've come to the right place. Call my friend Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is expanding faster than, well, I never thought it, faster than I thought it would. The Cowboy State Politics Podcast. This program, Cowboy State Politics Live, and now the Open Range Record. And again, I can't stress this enough. Make sure that you pay attention to the Open Range Record today. We're going to be releasing some more details on our High Plains 2026 High Plains Republican primary debate. It's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but we're going to have two debates, a gubernatorial debate and a debate for the U.S. House of Representatives. And I think that we've got an innovative way to handle that. That's going to be the announcement we're going to have a little bit later And we're going to live stream the whole thing to our platform and YouTube and all of that. So you'll be able to watch it, even if you aren't able to attend. So make sure that you pay attention to that later on today. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully it gets you a little bit engaged. Just kind of a little hint there from the Daily Caller. And this is, I think this one too needs to be a big topic in even the Wyoming election. But the title of the piece is "Clock Ticking on the GOP to Pass," well, literally anything as the midterms loom. Now, I mentioned earlier on the show that, and I think you've heard me say this on the program before, that really we don't have Republicans and Democrats in Washington, D.C. We have Republicrats. Both parties pretty much do exactly the same thing, which is nothing. We can't get the Save America Act through. Thank you, John Thune. It's too bad that his election is not coming up in South Dakota. But anyway, but they haven't really passed anything. And it's mainly the Senate that is the bottleneck. And so I think that one of the big issues in this election, if you're running for federal office, that is, so the Senate or the House, one of the bigger issue needs to be, what are you actually going to do? You know, I mean, and again, if you're in the House of Representatives, you're one of 435. Now, historically, Wyoming has had pretty good luck at having an outsized influence in the House of Representatives. And I mean, that's been to our credit. I mean, Harriet Hageman in the House of Representatives, like her, hate her, doesn't really matter. She has an outsized influence. I mean, she's only been in there for 2 terms, and she's already a rock star. I mean, if you ever get bored, just go on YouTube and type in Harriet Hageman Committee, and you'll be entertained for hours. But that being said, if you are running for the House or if you're running for the Senate, Wyoming voters deserve to know what specifically are you going to do, to the best of your ability to move the football down the field. I mean, to turn the double play on the diamond. I mean, you have got to do that because I think that American voters are sick to death of nothing happening. Whether you're on the left or the right, I think the left can, and they're only frustrated because of the Trump administration. But really, I mean, nothing has happened in the U.S. Senate. Here's what the Daily Caller says. With the midterms looming, Republicans have struggled to pass several policy agendas, including funding immigration enforcement, addressing affordability, and adding voter identification requirements. Republicans are on a time crunch to address the hot-button issues for voters, including the economy and immigration, before everybody casts their ballots in November. The Senate has 53 days in session before November. The House has about 40 days. A second reconciliation package aimed at funding immigration enforcement will not reach Trump's desk before his June 1 deadline, leaving Senate Republicans scrambling to pass the package once they return from the Memorial Day recess. So, I mean, pretty soon. Republicans are uncertain on how to handle the Trump administration's $1.8 billion fund that would pay people alleging the justice system was weaponized against them, as many senators intended to use the package to restrict the fund. Senate Majority Leader John Thune said his colleagues wanted to place conditions on who could receive the fund repayments, adding that he didn't want to see the need for the fund. He didn't really see the need for the fund. Bill Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana, who just got clobbered in his election, claimed the fund would allow Trump to hand payments to people without, quote, any legal precedent or accountability, while Republican Senator Tom Tillis said the fund would compensate people who assaulted Capitol police officers. So a couple of redcoats. If you're still claiming that the majority of people prosecuted over January 6th deserved it, you need to be voted out of office. I mean, like post haste. The vast majority of people that were prosecuted to the nth degree for, whatever their involvement in January 6th were done so. I mean, it was a miscarriage of justice. It was a travesty. It was absolutely wrong of this country to do that. There was one grandmother who she was just on restricted grounds, and they threw her in the hole for at least 2 months. A grandmother. Okay, so really, I mean, those people, and I don't really know yet how I feel about that, but if you were thrown in jail illegitimately and you lost your job or you lost your business or you lost your house, if you're sitting in jail, you can't work and you can't pay your mortgage payment. But any of those things, yes, you deserve to be compensated. Now, I mean, I would suggest that we take this through the civil courts, but the courts are, as they are right now. I mean, you got a liberal judge that'll throw something out, that'll make a completely partisan ruling, and then it has to go all the way to the Supreme Court, and then typically they reverse those things, though they've had a couple of misses during this administration. But those folks deserve to have redress. Absolutely, they do. And if you were persecuted by the Justice Department merely for being in D.C. on January 6th, yeah, you ought to have recompense for what you lost. Now, I don't know that it needs to go through, his compensation fund or it needs to go through the courts, but there has to be some sort of compensation there. Republican Representative Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania and Democratic Senator Tom Suozzi of New York also introduced legislation to prohibit the use of taxpayer funding. Okay, blah, 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 blah. The package would provide over $30.73 billion. And let's see here. Now, moving on to immigration. The package that they haven't been able to pass would provide $30 billion to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, $22.5 to Customs and Border Protection, $2.5 to Homeland Security through 2029. Senate Republicans drafted the legislation in response to the 76-day shutdown of DHS after Democrats refused to fund the agency following the high-profile shootings involving immigration agents in Minneapolis. So there's a lot of things that are in that package that the Senate has not been able to get passed. And, well, really, I mean, they haven't done anything, and most of that has been due to the Democrats' obstruction in the Senate. And so, in this election, if you've got an incumbent Democrat, they got to go. Look at their voting record. If they voted for this stupid shutdown or voted against funding ICE or voted against funding immigration, they got to go, my friends. There's no question about it. No question. All right. So I was kind of saving this story for the end of the program because it's truly, truly, truly bizarre. I mean, I don't, and often when I started this program, 6 years ago, I often looked at the news and I was like, well, I guess, I don't agree with that, but I guess it kind of makes sort of sense how that happened. But now there are stories that come out and I mean, you remember that song, Things That Make You Go, This is one of them. Remember this? Been a long time, I know.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood.
Now, it's been a longer time for you than it has for other people. I kid you not. Bill Gates, and this is from the New York Post, Bill Gates plotted to look like Mr. Rogers using customized mannequins to test boring potential outfits. Okay, I know, but think about Bill Gates, and you could probably see it. Let's see if I can show you a picture here. Let's see here. There it is right there, I think. Yep. All right, check this out. So there's Bill Gates. He kind of does look like Mr. Rogers, right? But according to the New York Post, he intentionally plotted to dress like this to make himself more lovable. Not even kidding. And I quote, billionaire Bill Gates devoted a great deal of time and money to try to make himself look as kind and approachable as TV's Mr. Rogers, with his team even using custom-sized mannequins to test out boring potential outfits. Gates' team toiled away on crafting the nerdy image he's known for today to make the 70-year-old tech mogul appear as a benevolent man focused on helping the world. Current and former employees told the Wall Street Journal. The goal was reportedly to make Gates look as genial as TV's Fred Rogers. To that end, his stylist tested outfits for different days of the week on the custom mannequin, with the team having access to, quote, troves of neutral-tone crew and V-neck sweaters, button-down shirts, slacks, and extra pairs of silver-lining optician's carbon glasses at an off-site building. So the guy had an entire wardrobe just so he could look like Mr. Rogers. To that end, his stylist tested outfits for, the outfits were specifically picked for Gates to wear during public events, with his employees reportedly sending the billionaire's senior staff 3 options to choose from. So can you imagine having people that they pick out 3 outfits for you, and then all you got to do is pick one of them? I'm assuming they bring those to you and set them on the bed as you get them out of the shower. I mean, I'm guessing how that works. While Gates' appearance was more in line with a quintessential nondescript tech nerd, the team believed their efforts were successful by the time the 2019 YouGov poll found the billionaire ranked at the very top of public figures whom people looked up to. The ranking is, quote, is quite fantastic and reflects the hard work and creativity of this team, crowed Larry Cohen, a longtime CEO of Gates Ventures and the Microsoft founder's right-hand man. Gates' team also reportedly pressed Netflix to make small changes to some shots taken during the 2 Netflix documentaries on the philanthropist. Now, such requests asked the team to edit out the sour look that Gates made during one interview, with another calling into question an image of Gates below, quote, Bernie Sanders' ID. Okay, so if you are Bill Gates, I suppose that you probably want to carefully craft your image. And, if you've got, a huge number of scandals, then maybe, you need to craft your image as best you can. So he does have a couple of problems. He has an association with Jeffrey Epstein. Gates' ties to the convicted sex offender were a major catalyst for his divorce. He's faced intense scrutiny for holding numerous meetings with Epstein, traveling on the private plane, and discussing a private partnership. Newly released federal documents and unsealed emails from Epstein allege that Epstein used his knowledge of an affair Gates had in the 2010s to attempt to blackmail and threaten him. So, when you crawl when you get in bed with a pig, you're both going to get dirty. He's got a little problem with workplace misconduct and extramarital affairs. After the 2021 divorce, reports emerged detailing a history of aggressive management style, bullying behavior, and inappropriate workplace relationships during his time at Microsoft, leading to a board-led investigation in 2019 that ultimately prompted him to step down from his company because he was, I guess, screwing around with the staff. Gates has openly addressed personal infidelities, confirming past affairs, plural, including one with a Microsoft employee, which contributed heavily to the breakdown of his marriage. Then, of course, there's the whole Microsoft problem. Lots of antitrust suits. In the late 90s and early 2000s, the U.S. government sued Microsoft in a landmark antitrust case, finding that the company held a monopoly and engaged in anti-competitive practices. Specifically, Gates was heavily criticized for illegally bundling Internet Explorer with Windows and to crush competitors like Netscape. I mean, that one's a blast from the past, but if you remember that was a big deal back in the late 90s. The case resulted in a settlement that restricted many of Microsoft's dominant control tactics and permanently altered Gates' reputation, transitioning him to a visionary tech hero away from Microsoft. And then, of course, there's the whole vaccine problem. Bill Gates has been at the forefront of the COVID vaccine and, trying to get the vaccine into cows. And I mean, it has been craziness. Through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Gates has faced vocal critics globally regarding the foundation's immense influence on international public health and agriculture. Detractors and conspiracy theorists, and okay, so put that in quotation marks, have frequently targeted Gates for his funding of experimental vaccine trials in developing nations. And so he's got a vaccine trial that he doesn't try it here. No, he doesn't go through the standard FDA process. He takes it to developing countries where people are going to take the vaccine because they're, force them to. While independent fact checkers, and I love that phrase, and public health authorities have broadly debunked extreme conspiracies such as microchip tracking and eugenics, the foundation remains a lightning rod for criticism over perceived lack of democratic accountability in global health governance. And in Wyoming, and I don't know if this is a controversy or not, it certainly is for some of the people that live in Kemmerer, but there's a nuclear plant that he is heavily involved in. I mean, it's one of his ventures. So, I mean, Gates, yeah, he's kind of a lightning rod. He always has been since his time at Microsoft. And so maybe he does need to look like Mr. Rogers a little bit. I'm not sure. Who knows? But, I mean, his clothes, definitely boring as a plate of tofu, my friends. And if you've ever had tofu, I'm telling you, boring as all get out. No flavor whatsoever, which is exactly what Bill Gates was trying to do. Absolutely bizarre. I mean, and Mr. Rogers of all people, I mean, who would want, I mean, I get wanting to be likable and all that, but really? Mr. Rogers? Crazy. Let's see here. So I'm pretty much at the end of the stack of stuff. So I think that'll probably do it for today's installment of the broadcast. We'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday, for a brand new installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. Make sure that you don't miss it. And make sure that you don't miss the announcement on the open range record. It'll come later this afternoon. I can't wait to show that to you. I think it's innovative. And hopefully it'll get you involved in our High Plains primary debate. But for now, my friends, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is the one and only Cowboy State Politics. We'll see you tomorrow, my friends. Have a good afternoon. Don't miss the open range record.